time. Maryland's reproductive freedom has historically been protected by a layering. And it's been a layering of Maryland law, of Maryland's Constitution, of federal law, and also the U.S. Constitution. But unfortunately, as we saw in real time, the U.S. Supreme Court no longer recognizes that the fundamental right to privacy protects our ability to make our own reproductive health provisions, leaving the decision to regulate abortion up to individual states without additional constitutional protections. I've been very clear from the beginning, very clear for the past 2 years we were running. As long as I am the governor of Maryland, our state will be a safe haven for abortion rights. But the importance of today and the importance of all of these leaders is this. We're going to make sure that Maryland is a safe haven for abortion rights long after I am governor of this state. That's the importance of today. That is why on day one, I released $3.5 million of previously withheld funding for the abortion care clinical training program. That program will help ensure access to high-quality, safe abortion care in Maryland by providing grants for clinical training of abortion care providers and their clinical care teams. And further, we are committed and making a commitment to protecting reproductive rights by also working in partnership with this remarkable legislature to introduce legislation. Right now, there are 4 bills that are headed to the floor, all of which I support, that will protect abortion access, privacy, and out-of-state patients. Myself and the Lieutenant Governor, we not only support these bills, when these bills make them to my desk, I will sign them. And additionally, I want to say thank you and say that the Lieutenant Governor and I fully support the Speaker's proposed constitutional amendment and for her unwavering commitment to enshrining reproductive rights into Maryland's Constitution. In the wake of what we saw in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, it is the only way to ensure that the rights of future generations of Marylanders are protected. This is the right thing to do, and we are fully supported and excited to be able to support however we can on this. And so we know that there are some states right now that have decided to move towards restricting women's rights. I can assure you that here in Maryland, we're going to protect them. And that our neighbors, we have neighbors, for example, in Virginia, who are proposing legislation to tear down these protections and even outlaw abortion access entirely. Here in Maryland, we're proposing legislation too, except we will enhance those protections in the state of Maryland. Here in Maryland, we are unafraid to lead, and I am proud to stand by this legislation and to stand with this legislature to make sure that Maryland is a safe haven for abortion rights for generations to come. Now I'm honored to turn the podium over to our Lieutenant Governor, and with not only an excitement but also a thank you for all of her leadership on this and many other issues for a very long time, our Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller.
Thank you so much, Governor. It is such an honor to serve beside you. And good morning, everyone. I just want to say I am not only proud to serve beside the governor, but I'm proud to serve beside this incredible legislature. And so I want to say I stand before all of you today along with Governor Moore, the House and Senate leadership, and the many defenders, fighters, and protectors of reproductive rights, as we announce a bold legislative package for reproductive health care. You know, it was 30 years ago, in a statewide referendum, Maryland preserved the right to abortion in our state law. But my, oh my, the world has changed in these past 30 years. Most recently, as you heard, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the landmark Roe v. Wade. And now more than ever, we need to make sure that our state constitution permanently protects reproductive rights. Through a referendum, let us go directly to the voters and through their approval enshrine the right to choose in our Constitution. Just as they did 30 years ago, I'm confident Marylanders will vote to protect reproductive rights permanently. And because Maryland is a state where we leave no one behind. And again, I want to say how proud I am to stand with the legislature here to make sure this happens. Thank you so much. And now it is my great honor to turn over the podium to, Senate President Ferguson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. Thank you, Mr. Governor, Madam Speaker. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am so thrilled that we are joined here today by members of both chambers for our first joint legislative and executive press conference here in this incredible Capitol. I want to thank as well the senators who have joined us here today, and particularly Senator Hettleman, Senator Feldman, and Senator Smith, who are the lead sponsors of the Senate cross-files of the package for reproductive rights that we'll be discussing this afternoon. We're here for a very important reason. After what I believe was truly an extreme and destructive decision by the Supreme Court last summer, it has been left to the states to ensure that we protect our residents here in Maryland. Those seeking reproductive health care will find that Maryland protects reproductive freedom in our state. We protect the freedom to make medical decisions between a patient and a doctor. We protect freedom from prosecution and persecution, from antiquated opinions and regressive policies. And we protect freedom from political interference, of political whims denying individuals right to self-determination. In a post-Roe world, Maryland has a responsibility to lead and to become a beacon of freedom on the national stage. Enshrining reproductive freedom in our state's constitution is the right thing to do to protect privacy over one's own body. This amendment to our Constitution affords the highest level of protection against attacks on reproductive liberties and bodily autonomy. Lastly, before I hand it to the Speaker, I want to publicly again thank the Governor and his administration for releasing the $3.5 million in funds that the legislature approved last year for training healthcare providers to expand reproductive access for women across the state in the Abortion Care Access Act of 2022. These are important investments, and I want to thank the Governor for that decision. Thank you all for being here, and would like to introduce the individual who has helped to spearhead this effort, Speaker Adrian Jones.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm pleased to be here with the Governor, the Lieutenant Governor, Senate President, as well as the House and Senate members of the General Assembly, and everyone else as well. It's a new day in Annapolis. This is our first press conference, and it demonstrates our commitment to working together on legislation and other issues. I'm proud that our first announcement is in support of bills that will protect so many women in Maryland and across the country. In the 8 months following the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade, nearly half of the states in the country are positioned to ban or heavily restrict abortion, including our neighbor, West Virginia. We anticipated that might happen. That's why last year we passed legislation to provide funding to train new providers and expand access to abortion. When Governor Hogan refused to release those funds, it was clear that the legislature can pass laws, but there are limitations. ultimately, the governor has the final say in how those laws are carried out. Fortunately, Governor Moore released those funds on his first day in office. But we can't take anything for granted in the future. Reproductive care must be a right enshrined in our Constitution, so it can never be up for debate or used as a bargaining chip. And we must take further action so anyone seeking or providing reproductive care is protected. Let me say this. It doesn't matter what Texas, West Virginia, or any other state legislature does. They will never dictate what Maryland does. They will never dictate the rights of Marylanders. For the purpose of reproductive liberty and the safety of Maryland patients, providers, and volunteers, what happens in Maryland is going to stay in Maryland. The healthcare decisions we make about our bodies are deeply personal and should be between a person and their doctor. Reproductive care is health care. And this bill package guarantees that it's legal, safe, and accessible in Maryland. Regardless of what other states do, we can guarantee that Maryland will be a safe haven for reproductive freedom. Before I introduce the next speaker, I want to thank both Health and Government Operations Chair, Health and Government Operations Committee Chair Jocelyn Pena-Melnick and Vice Chair Ariana Kelly for all their hard work over the interim on this issue. I am now going to turn it over to Vice Chair of the Health and Government Operations Committee, Delegate Kelly, to explain the bills.
All right. I'm old now, so I need my glasses for this. Thank you all. Thank you to the Madam Speaker for that wonderful introduction. And I feel so, it's bittersweet to have to be here today, but it is so reassuring to see all of my colleagues behind me today as we discuss the 2023 Reproductive Rights Protection Package. Obviously, I'm going to repeat what we just heard. We have to thank Madam Speaker for her tremendous leadership and vision in this space. Can we give her another round of applause? None of this would be happening without her, and of course the Senate President, who is also showing tremendous leadership. Thank you, Mr. President. And these two behind us, I'm going to start with Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, who is a champion on these issues. There she is. And you all have heard about the importance of the action that was taken by our new governor. Let me just tell you that there's nothing like having a friend on the second floor on these issues. Thank you so much, Governor Moore. So as you all have heard, last year we expanded access and we increased our provider network. We established the Clinical Training Fund, which was the first program like that in the nation, and a number of other states that are committed to remaining pro-choice are following our lead on that. They're watching how we're doing it, they're replicating it, because Maryland is a leader in this space, and as the Senate President mentioned, we need to continue to be a beacon. After the Dobbs decision, what we need to do is everything that we can do to permanently protect reproductive freedom here in the state of Maryland. And we're doing that with this package. I am so excited about it. We're doing it in the face of those aggressive tactics that Madam Speaker referred to from other states like Texas and Missouri. Those states, what they're trying to do is to intimidate providers and patients. They're trying to scare away Maryland's providers and patients from providing legal health care that's legal here in the state of Maryland. We're not going to let that happen. That's what these 4 bills address together. They are a message to our children and our grandchildren that we will not let their reproductive freedoms be rolled back. We will not be intimidated. We will not let abortion care become stigmatized in the state of Maryland. That's what this package does. The first piece of legislation is the constitutional amendment, which I know everyone is familiar with. It is the most important action that we can take to send that message to our children and grandchildren. It is the most important thing we need to do this year in this space. The second piece of, and of course, in case y'all don't know, sponsor of that bill is our Speaker. And in the Senate this year, the President has put in the bill. So I feel like we're really well positioned. I feel good about it. The second piece of legislation is the Reproductive Health Protection Act. And that legislation we have sponsored by in the House, a duo, a lawyer and a doctor, Delegate Nicole Williams and Delegate Terry Hill. And they are, yeah, let's give them a hand. They have been working all interim to make sure that we have legislation, and they have partnered with the chairman of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, Will Smith. He's here in the back. This legislation is going to protect providers and patients from out-of-state criminal, legal, and administrative penalties. We are taking what we have learned from other states that are pro-choice as they've been addressing this legislatively. We are working with states across the country to figure out how to do this best in the state of Maryland, consistent with Maryland law. It's a really exciting and important piece of legislation in terms of ensuring that our providers and our patients in the state of Maryland are safe. The third piece of legislation that we have in this package is House Bill 477, which is my bill that I am working on with Delegate Stephanie Smith, who's back there. And she chairs the Education Committee of our Appropriations Committee, as well as Chairman Brian Feldman over in the Senate, who chairs the new EEE Education, Environment, and Energy Committee in the Senate. And they are working together to make sure that our students in the state of Maryland have access to reproductive health care services, from contraception to emergency contraception and including abortion access. That's a really important bill for maintaining access in the state of Maryland. And the final piece of legislation, also incredibly important, and it all fits together. I hope you all are sensing a theme, right? We're trying to ensure that these rights are permanent. Starting with the constitutional amendment, that's the most important thing we can do. But as we drill down on that, we're protecting our patients and providers. We are ensuring access to care for everyone who needs access to care. And this piece of legislation, which is the Reproductive Health Services Protected Information Bill, it's kind of wonky. It's kind of nerdy. It's what we like to do in Maryland, right? It's forward thinking. And I'm not going to talk about it too much because this is a piece of legislation from my colleague, Delegate Sandy Rosenberg, who is back there. And he partnered in the Senate with, and just so you know, in case you didn't know, Sandy Rosenberg did lead the fight on the floor 31 years ago for the original codification of Roe versus Wade. And he is partnering in the Senate with a senator I'm about to introduce, Senator Shelley Heddleman. But before I introduce her, I just want to say that this piece of legislation, while it's nerdy, is incredibly important. It's so important to ensure that reproductive freedom in Maryland, we don't expose personal information, right, for providers and patients. This is a data privacy bill. Just recently, an abortion facility was attacked by a homemade bomb in Illinois. That is one example of the threats faced by providers and patients. So the point of this bill is to strengthen privacy protections and not expose personal information. I am going to introduce Senator Heddleman, who's going to explain this bill a little bit more. I just want you all to know that this is a really forward-thinking piece of legislation, and this is another example of Maryland leading in this space. And we couldn't have a better leader to talk to about this than a senator who has been a champion on these issues for decades, Senator Shelley Heddleman.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Shelley Heddleman. I'm a senator from District 11, and I'm so pleased to be here this morning with my colleagues to describe the 2023 Reproductive Health Protection Package. The Supreme Court's decision this past summer in the Dobbs case fundamentally altered the rights of individuals to make very personal decisions about their own bodies and reproductive health care, about when and whether to have a child. And they left it to the states to determine whether or not to protect reproductive freedom. In less than a year, abortion has been banned in 14 states, and another 12 are either expected to ban it or they have court cases pending. I am proud to call Maryland home and to stand with Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, with President Ferguson, with Speaker Jones, Delegate Ariana Kelly, such an incredible leader, and all of my colleagues to unequivocally state that we will protect access to abortion, and not only say it, but to enshrine these basic protections in our Constitution and in our laws. That we will that we will continue to protect Marylanders and to ensure that they have the autonomy to make decisions about their own bodies and their reproductive health. That we will not let the Supreme Court or other states dictate what rights Marylanders are entitled to, and we will not let other states' laws threaten our rights, threaten our decision-making, or intimidate us. I have introduced Senate Bill 786, along with my wonderful colleague, Delegate Sandy Rosenberg, to protect healthcare provider and patient information. We all know that information is power. Electronic health record systems, which enable healthcare providers to share information about a patient, very personal and detailed information about one's reproductive health choices, can be shared across state lines. And in states that are incentivizing private citizens to turn on individuals who are providing any sort of assistance to those who are choosing to have an abortion, we could be putting our healthcare providers and our patients seeking care in Maryland at risk. I want to share a few stories that illustrate the need for this bill. First, I have a friend who was visiting another state and sought medical care from an urgent care clinic. When the nurse pulled up her electronic health medical record, she had access to my friend's full medical record and could see the kind of care she had sought. Sometimes that's not a problem. But what if she had had an abortion recently and that was in her record and also included the name of the doctor who had treated her? A second example. Only a few weeks ago, the Food and Drug Administration gave permission for physicians to prescribe mifepristone. It is one of the major drugs used in medication abortions. Now that information will also be in a patient's health record along with the provider's information. Having this data available in states that are hostile to abortion and that incentivize a kind of vigilantism that Texas's Senate Bill 8 does opens up the provider and the patient to intimidation and could have a profound, chilling effect on healthcare professionals' willingness to serve. We already know that abortion opponents in Texas have called providers in California, seeking to intimidate them into not providing abortions. Under this bill, a patient will have to affirmatively give permission if they want those records released. Technology has made information sharing unbelievably easy and quick, and few of us realize how far and wide our very personal information is shared. This bill says no more by protecting the most personal and sensitive health information for both the provider and the patient. Thank you, and we'll take questions.
question for President Ferguson.
Oh, for you.
Yeah.
Oh, just give us one moment. Give one moment. One moment.
It's not you.
No, please. No, I think now we had the possibility of the Dobbs case decision, and we knew that we had to get done what we could get done to protect access in Maryland. And so the Abortion Access Care Act of last year was absolutely essential to make sure that our providers were not overwhelmed. And so this year, now in a post-Roe Dobbs environment, it's absolutely critical that we as a state put in our state constitution the state protection that wasn't necessary last year when we had the U.S. Constitution was our protection. And so the world has changed as a result of the Dobbs case. And so now that's why it's so essential this year that this bill pass. We're going to pass it this year. We're going to pass it this year.
Sure. We do know in Maryland, like in many states that provide access to abortion, there has been an increase in our patient load for some of our providers, particularly providers that border West Virginia, as the speaker mentioned. We're also seeing increased traffic from patients in Texas because there is a somewhat affordable airfare. But what that speaks to is the fact that those that can afford airfare can afford access. So this is why we really have to make sure to look at this as an equity issue. But yes, to answer your question simply, we have seen a slight increase. We're looking to get some more specific numbers on that, but from anecdotal information from our providers, they're seeing more patients. That's not a new situation in our state, unfortunately. The threats that abortion providers have faced, and to be honest, that legislators who support abortion-related legislation have faced are real and scary. And that's why I consistently refer to those healthcare providers as healthcare heroes. They're standing up to intimidation on a daily basis. We need to do everything we can to protect them and make sure they feel secure. They're committed to the work they do, but it is an incredible emotional burden to deal with that kind of threat on a daily basis. Again, we have anecdotal information. So I have heard from providers that there is an increased interest in states like Maryland because you have 14 states where abortion has been banned, and you have a lot of activists who are working in those states who are now looking where else they can do their work. Thank you. Thank you for everything, Stephen.
Thank you.
Good.